People, thank you for your patience. We had a couple of last-minute technical difficulties. My name is Tony Jackman, and I want to welcome you to Knives Out, which is the first Daily Maverick, thank God it's food, webinar. And to our special guests, Liam Tomlin and Reuben Riffel. If you're not seeing Liam at the moment, it's because he, like me, is on his way back into the room, which is something I was having a little bit of technical difficulty with a minute ago. Thanks to Reuben in Franschhoek for his help. He managed to get us in. So he does more than cook. He's a good mate, and he can also do some tech stuff, which he wasn't aware of 2 minutes ago. So look, welcome Rubes, and welcome Liam. Liam, as I said, you will be seeing him within a few seconds or perhaps minutes. First, some housekeeping. Thank you to Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for sponsoring this webinar. Please keep an eye on the chat to the right of your screen. There are a number of people here from the restaurant industry, restaurateurs, chefs, and others. Perhaps we might have people with food stalls or farm stalls or what catering businesses. There are a lot of people in the house, so to speak, and one of them, as you can see, as I can see, is about to be Liam, who's busy rejoining us. So what we encourage you to do is, even though you can't take part live, as it were, you can't come into the room and talk to us, you can chat to us with your questions in the chat field, and I will try to ask as many of your questions as we have time for. And another thing that is of import is something that we did yesterday. We wanted to bring you into the room in other ways as well. So what we did is we asked participants ahead of today, ahead of the webinar, how the pandemic, we asked a few questions. The first of them was, how has the pandemic affected your business? And of the 76 of you who responded, which is that's a good showing, to that question, 62.5% have had to close temporarily, 31.9% have had to lay off staff, and 4 of the 74 have had to do that thing that we are hoping most of you can avoid, and that is close their businesses for good. Permanent closure of places that didn't need to close, that nobody wanted to close. And we are all here to talk about the kind of thing that has been happening, that have made that for those 4 restaurants of this group an inevitability. And we're all hoping and praying that those numbers won't become much larger. We also asked our respondents if the alcohol ban had affected turnover. 56.8% replied yes, the balance no. And 72.4% indicated that they did not agree with the curfew, 72.4%. And of course, I should imagine everybody in the room, in the webinar, and I call it the room for my own purposes, has a good idea of why that is. But it's not for me to lay that out. That's what our guests will be talking about shortly. So now to the reason we're all here today, and shortly, as I said, that will include Liam, who's still trying to get back in. But Rubes and I, we will carry on in the meantime. Winter is a hellhole for restaurants, even in normal times. As somebody who's observed the business for decades, since the late 70s, I've always been aware that, restaurants that start a winter don't all end, don't all stay afloat for that whole period, even in a normal winter. So many have gone unable to stay afloat when people stay at home. Often by the time spring and the sun and warmth return, it's too late for them and they've closed forever. That's in normal times, without a pandemic. The advent of a virus and the lockdown that has come with it has turned a normal winter into a winter of massive discontent for the restaurant industry in South Africa. It's been a helter-skelter time for the industry ever since lockdown first began in late March. For a long time, they could not operate at all and found inventive ways to repurpose their skills and their generosity. And of course, we've all seen the many wonderful ventures that have put food into mouths throughout the land. And that has been a joy to watch, despite the dire circumstances that have made that necessary. For a brief respite, restaurants could open again within certain hours, but they could not sell alcohol, and what is a meal without wine? Jobs are being lost, and jobs are being lost. And welcome, Liam, back to the room.
Thank you.
Here we all are, the terrible trio, and we're going to start talking about the reason we're all here today. So jobs are being lost, and this week feels to me like a sudden escalation of the virus towards the peak. But in this context, of course, for restaurants and for jobs, which brings us to our first question. 1 million seats on the streets and the jobs and the associated jobs save lives #protests took place yesterday. So Liam, starting with you, how did it play out from your perspective?
We had a brilliant reception yesterday. I must say, about 11:30, I was on Bree Street. There wasn't very many people, and I was getting a little bit concerned that we wouldn't get the response that we were hoping for. But by 12 o'clock, there was, I don't know how many people, but it was in the hundreds of people on Bree Street, and it was from young students to restaurateurs, to our staff, the hotel staff behind us, the restaurants across the street from us. Our suppliers came. And then most importantly, we had amazing support from our customers, our normal guests. I mean, all our regular guests turned up in support, and they all had signs. We had people driving up and down the street, hooting their horns with signs on the car windows. It was incredible. It really, really was incredible. It was wonderful to see.
And you've been in touch, presumably, with other colleagues around the country in other centres. Have you got an idea from anybody else of how it went for them?
Well, Reuben and I were chatting just a few minutes ago. I mean, Franschhoek was, from all the images I've seen and the video footage I've seen, Franschhoek, there was definitely well over 1,000 people there, from what I've seen. I've had people sending me messages and pictures from Bloemfontein, from Johannesburg, from Durban, from right across the country. It's incredible. It's really, people got behind it yesterday. Yeah.
And do you have a sense that government is listening?
I'd like to think they are. I really would. They can't be ignoring it, because it was on every social media page. It's in every newspaper at the moment. We've had amazing TV coverage. We've had amazing radio interviews. We're doing this webinar now. They can't be ignoring it. I mean, they've got to get the message. Somebody's got to be looking at it going, this is a crisis, because it is a crisis now. It's at a crisis stage.
Absolutely. No, there's no denying it. And Reuben, coming to you, can you tell us about how things went down in Franschhoek? Were you out on the streets? Did you have a first-hand view of what happened?
Well, people came out in Franschhoek. I mean, there was obviously not just the restaurants, restaurateurs, but a lot of the businesses in and around the main road. Obviously, also quite a bit of the wine farmers and came out in their droves. But like Liam said, I think the great thing is also the Franschhoek residents, just sort of our customers and people living in this area. They all came out because I think they all realized that, I don't want to say Franschhoek is built on the hospitality industry, but it's an integral part of this town. It's sort of like how this town developed and became what it is now. So you can't just ignore it and say, we're not going to take part in it. So yeah, you can see the frustration. I think you can always say that yes, we do enjoy standing up together and getting together to bring about some change. And definitely you could see that. But I think the frustrations of people, people are tired of this. They at least want some answers, at least want some direction, or at least want some sort of idea of, when can we, I know the government doesn't have a crystal ball, but if we can have some consistent sort of communication, at least it would help.
Yeah. Now, look, you and I go back a long, long way to, was it the 90s? When we first met, when you first started at Mono. So what year would that have been?
Excuse me, Tony?
Mono. What year would that have been? When we first...
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, I remember everyone was still so scared of you because you were, top of the times, and the one guy that could write a proper review back then. So I just heard of this Tony Jackman guy. So I remember Mono was when I met you the first time. Yes.
And since those days, I mean, in those days, Franschhoek was only the beginning of becoming the big food capital that in the world that it ultimately became. And so I haven't been in Franschhoek, obviously, during the lockdown because I'm far away in the Eastern Cape. So I have in my mind the image of Franschhoek in my mind is the old one of the tourists in the streets, the tour buses, people filling every table, outside every restaurant, inside every restaurant. In peak tourist times, it was hard to find somewhere to sit, even with the choice that there was. How does it compare now? What is it like to see it so different and devastating?
Tony, I actually was thinking back to, because I'm from Franschhoek, and I remember back to the early days when we used to come up to town to church on a Sunday, and you can sort of like walk the streets, and it would be like a ghost town.
Yeah.
And especially during the initial lockdown, the first sort of wave and the second wave, that's exactly what I saw again. When I took my kids down the main road up and down, and it's devastating to see that. It's sad to see so many places on the main road and everywhere just closed and nothing's happening. So I think it filled me with sadness, I think, and it's still continuing in a way.
It's sad is the word. And Reuben, before we cross back to Liam, this has also hit you personally. Paternoster has closed?
Well, I think there's been some, in the media, some of our places closed even prior to COVID, so I'm not going to blame it all on that.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we had, I think like close to a year ago, we closed one or two of those restaurants already. So, but we did close the one now in Johannesburg, and that's different. That's, because of what's happening now. The reality is you've got to consolidate. We try to keep it sort of kind of going as far as we could, but the reality is you've got to consolidate now, and we unfortunately had to close that one down.
Okay. Sad to hear it. And Liam, coming back to you, following yesterday's protests, are there immediate plans of what to do next? What's the next stage?
I think we've got to just carry on. I'm going to keep posting images. I'm going to keep posting facts as I find them, as restaurants close, as people lose their jobs. I'm going to just keep posting it. I mean, we've got amazing support. I've had support from all over the world at this stage now. We've got support from Hong Kong, from Australia, from the UK, from Scotland, from Ireland, Germany, Italy, Spain, all over the place.
What kind of support? What kind of
There's
support?
People in the restaurant industry, in the hospitality industry abroad, standing outside their restaurants in support of
Oh.
what's going on here in South Africa.
Is that so?
I mean, they've
Wow.
all gone through the same thing as us, but they've been allowed. I've got a restaurant in Barcelona, and we're allowed to serve alcohol there. We're allowed to trade late into the evening. We've been given, we're restricted on how many people we can have in the dining space, but at least we can, that business is sustainable now. People are traveling again back in Barcelona. The locals are supporting us in Barcelona, and it can be done here if it's done properly. If it's, you know, we're talking about lifting this alcohol ban. We're fully licensed. You know, I've said it lots of times. People, most of our guests arrive in an Uber. They leave in an Uber. They're not drinking, driving. Most of our guests will have a bottle of wine over a 3-hour period. It's not our type of clientele. They're not out to get drunk. They're out for an experience, a dining experience. And part of that is being able to have a bottle of wine or a beer and to be able to eat past 7 o'clock in the evening. Because at the moment, with the 9 o'clock curfew, guests have to leave by 7 to permit us to allow us to clean, to allow our staff to get home by 9 so they don't get fined. Because this is happening as well. Staff are getting fined for being 7 minutes over the curfew.
So a 9 o'clock curfew isn't actually a 9 o'clock curfew at all, if you think about it.
No.
It's about the 7:30 curfew, because there's all the time for all of that needs to be factored in, needs to be taken into account. Do you know of any other, do either of you, well, I'll come to you in turn, know of any other country in the world where it has been made quite as difficult as this? Reuben?
No, I don't, you know, and I do follow a lot of the international news and what's going on there, because obviously, you know, you kind of like want to, initially I was watching Italy, and we can remember how bad it was there and how bad it was in New York especially. And I wanted to sort of like see how, you know, how they got out of it. And it was encouraging initially to see how Italy came out of it, and you saw some restaurants opening. I mean, Liam knows. I mean, he's got friends in the restaurant industry all over the world. So I follow him on social media, and he always shares all of that, you know, whether it's places closing or how the guys are getting going again. But I don't think anywhere it's been made so difficult to, you know, to trade in our business or to just sort of allow us to be able to make a living.
Yeah. I'm going to go to a question from one of our people in the house, if the stream will keep still. And that is Rosalind Jacob. The demonizing and basically criminalizing of alcohol, and thus any industry related to this, must stop. That's a comment rather than a question. In fact, going to skip back to what I was about to ask myself, and that is this. So I'd like to suggest that this is the crux, if you like, of the problem. The disparity or conflict between two greatly desired outcomes. On the one hand, the restaurant industry wants to survive. On the other, we have to defeat the virus and limit deaths. So how do we find a solution that rescues restaurants and enhances their chances of survival without encouraging the spread of the virus? In one scenario, restaurants die. In the other scenario, people die. Is there a solution? What is the solution, Reuben?
Tony, I don't think I have the answers to what is the solution, but I can make some suggestions and things that I've seen.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there's a reality to this, and the reality is we can't be in lockdown forever. You know, the more you read about this virus is, you know, unless we get a definite vaccine, we're going to have to try and learn to live with it. And I would like for us to kind of refocus on how do we try and live with it in all types of business. And if you break it down to our business, entering a restaurant, just getting your temperature checked and a spray of sanitizer and wearing a mask, I think that's a good start, but I don't think it's the answer to how we can make people feel comfortable and you know, at ease to come to our restaurants to to come and support us. So if we can try and refocus, and I mean, with the private sector, with out there people in the technology sector, I'm sure we can start working on better solutions to kind of make people more comfortable to come out and dine in our restaurants. I mean, I'm not going to become a carpenter or a builder or anything. I mean, I did that early in my career. I don't want to go back to that. I don't have a talent for that stuff. I'd like to continue having a restaurant, but then I'd like to see how we can work to make people feel safer in those spaces. And I mean, there's already a long list of things that can be done.
Yeah.
And I'd like us to sort of investigate and as an industry start working towards that.
Yeah. The word decimate is very widely misused. I mean, what decimation really means is to come down to 10% of something. So is it possible that the threat to the restaurant industry is such that it may be decimated? In other words, brought down in the true sense of the word, brought down to imagine a scenario as bad as that 10% of restaurants survive, and thereby obviously 10% of jobs in restaurants are all that might be left over. Does it look as bad as that to you, Reuben?
Liam, Tony, at the moment, I'd like to think that it won't be as bad as that. I know we're already in the midst of this. The reality is already there's a lot of places that's not going to be opening up again.
Yeah.
Whether they'll mushroom up elsewhere, hopefully, because I always say the reality is also we are a resilient bunch. People, restaurateurs, chefs, we go through difficult times often, and we sometimes survive. If we don't, we restart somewhere else. But the reality is, I think after COVID, definitely a lot of places are going to close. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Whether it's down to 10%, I don't know. The reality is there's going to be less punters, less people coming out, less people because they're going to have less money to come and support us. So for sure, in that type of economy, unfortunately, we're going to see less eateries out there.
And have you, like so many others, been doing home deliveries, catering, things like that to keep things ticking over?
Yeah, look, I mean, for various reasons, whether it's just trying to do something. I think what we realized early on, I mean, you can't just sit home and do nothing. You've got to try and do something at least, and give something a go, and then maybe from that you can you connect with something else and you can try something. We've done that. We're still doing it. Some of us keep ourselves busy doing sort of Zoom cook-alongs with people, with corporate and these type of things. I've done a few of those.
I know.
But I've sort of made the decision not to open the restaurants even after the president announced it initially, just because, like you mentioned, we've been through sort of like these bad winter seasons where we know there's not enough custom, and we are going to lose money. Now we're in a situation where we can't serve alcohol, and we obviously have the curfew, and people are going to be less sort of at ease to come out. So we just decided to rather keep closed, and that's what's happening now. People that's opening, I admire that, because we just don't want to sit at home. I think people want to give it a go. They want to try and get back there and sort of claw their way back to at least keep some of their people going, or for themselves just to be able to do something. And sitting at home can't be a good thing, Tony. It's never good. It's not good for the psyche.
No. Yeah, and I'm somebody who works from home, and when you work from home, as I do, and then you can go out even less. So it's really at least one gets to use one's own kitchen a lot more. I see we're still waiting for Pearl. We're trying to get back into the room, but we'll forge ahead, and we'll just have a nice chat together in the meantime until he's able to rejoin us. So regardless of the laws and the rules, the restrictions imposed upon us, upon your industry, what can you do to keep us safe in a future scenario where we are permitted to come to your restaurant, but the virus is still around? So you're allowed to have us. We can come in our drones as normal in a future scenario, but how are you going to keep us safe, Reuben?
Tony, there's the normal. Tony, there's the normal protocols that people are talking about. Like I mentioned, I can go over it again. Where we take temperatures, whether it's all our staff and the people that enter the restaurant, wearing masks from a staff's point of view, sanitizing everything that comes into the building, whether it's deliveries and so forth. Obviously, protocol within the kitchen space, especially in terms of social distancing and the washing of hands on a regular basis and sanitizing. But then also from a customer point of view, we won't have menus. Like I don't think if I mentioned to you, but I mean, some people are talking about QR codes, but you can also just WhatsApp or email menus and people can order off their phone. They don't need to touch the menu. You can have a normal old school blackboard menu that only your waiters touch and the guests don't need to touch it. I mean, there's all these stuff that we can do. But we will have, and I think I've heard Liam saying that as well. I mean, restaurants already, a professional kitchen and a restaurant already, when it comes to hygiene, we have to continuously make sure that our places are safe and clean, whether it's washing hands, whether it's sanitizing our spaces. That's what we do. We already spend quite a lot of money on doing that. Obviously, now we have times that by 10 to even try harder. But the reality is, in some cases, you have experts coming in that gives you advice how to do that even better, and that's something we also have to sort of try and look at. But definitely, we're going to have to spend more money to be better at it, and that's the reality.
I think that the way I see part of the problem, the scenario, is that there are some of us, and I include myself in that, who will need convincing before they go back to restaurants again. Perhaps in my case, I'm a little bit older, and I have some of those sort of health issues that keep getting stated every time people talk about this. So I think that even once everybody can reopen as normal, there will be some people who will need to be convinced. Do you see what I mean? We will need to be convinced. No, you will be safe with us. We've got you. And this is how we've got you. Liam, do you have a take on that?
Tony, I agree with you. I totally get there's a lot of people who've got those concerns. But for me, it's no different than going to the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's no different than going and filling your car up with petrol. It's no different than dropping your kids off and picking your kids up from school.
Yeah.
I know some parents aren't sending their children back to school. And I get that. I understand that. But, going to restaurants is probably one of the safest places you can go to right now, because we are spacing our tables.
It's like flying rather than driving.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Reuben has said, we always keep our kitchens clean as it is. We've already...
even in normal times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said the other day, we can't get insurance unless we've got certificates from, for our extraction hoods, etc. So I get them cleaned at a huge expense every 2 months in 5 restaurants. It's a massive expense.
Yeah.
So honestly, they're probably some of the safest places you can actually go to right now if you want to go out. It's probably safer than walking down Sea Point Promenade at 9 o'clock in the morning when everybody's out exercising. Yeah,
I'm smiling because I've got in my mind the image that some people will have in their heads of Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmares and the nightmares that are found inside those.
Yeah, well,
kitchens. I think people need to
Those
understand
places
it's not
should have
really
been
like
locked
in those places.
They should have been locked down long time before
Yeah.
COVID. I can't even believe they make a TV program out of such
Yeah.
rubbish, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe Gordon Ramsay put his name to that, but that's not the topic here. But anyway.
No. But it's opposite, because people will need, as I say, to be convinced, and so
Yeah.
people need to understand that even in normal times, most of you don't do what those sort of restaurateurs do that Gordon manages.
No, absolutely.
It's not reality for most of you.
During lockdown, we've been busy. I mean, at one of our restaurants up at Bokenstanshire, we've actually extended the kitchen at a huge cost, so chefs have more space to work in. We've reduced the amount of chefs who can work at one particular time.
Yeah.
We're busy converting spaces in other restaurants into private dining rooms now, to try and to cater for people like yourself who do have a concern about going to a restaurant and sharing a space with other people, but you might be more comfortable with coming to a private dining room where you're going to be just with you and your family or your friends, and you feel a lot safer, and you'll only have interaction with one waiter. We're doing everything we can to make it possible so we can get open and start saving some jobs, because this is what it's all about right now for me. It's about saving jobs.
Yeah, that is most interesting. So do you think that could be one of the ways in which the world is changing, in particular in this instance, restaurants are going to change? We're going to see more smaller private dining rooms, more private options within restaurant spaces. Do you think that is going to become fairly widespread?
I think we're going to have to. You know, again, I've been saying, repeating myself. I feel like I'm just repeating myself every time we talk about this. But you know, 100-seat restaurant is designed to serve 100 people, if not more. It's designed to turn tables and that. It's very hard for us to make, under normal circumstances, it's very hard to make a profit in a restaurant. Now, where we have to reduce the amount of people we can have in it, now if we're going to reduce the space even more to turn what used to be 20 seats into a private dining room for 8 people, you know, at the end, you've got to look at it and think, is it worth it? Is it worthwhile? Is this a viable business anymore? But at the moment, we're just going to try and do the best we can. As soon as we can go back to 100%, those private dining rooms will turn back into what they used to be. But for now, just to try and get people into our restaurants, feeling comfortable, feeling safe, this is what we're doing. And I mean, I speak to lots of people in the industry. Everybody has been very creative at the moment. We all just want to survive.
Yeah. And Reuben, is that something you're also doing, creating private spaces within your restaurants? Is that also a thing for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, our idea was also, once we get going, to have, you know, less. Obviously, I mean, that's going to be part of already as it is now. I mean, we can seat about 90 to 100 people in our space as well, excluding outside. So we are going to have to get used to doing less people, but also then maybe changing our space inside, maybe offer different sort of services, whether we turn half of our restaurant into kind of like a shop or takeaway or whatever. You know, we're going to have to look at other things also in the interim to kind of weather the storm. Because we can't just have empty tables standing there and not see people. And we're going to also have to utilize the space in some way. But yeah, that's what we're also looking at. I think everyone needs to look at that. I think as a collective, in terms of our industry, I suppose that's the one thing that I'd like us to move towards now. So that there's kind of that type of consistency, because like you say, I think people are gonna want to feel safe in our spaces. So we all are gonna have to kind of work together and see how we can help each other so that there's consistency there.
And this is sort of related as in a way to that particular subject we've been chatting about, and that is that experts agree that dining outdoors is the safest way of eating out in the COVID-19 era. So how about some proactive measures in this enforced downtime, which could go on, who knows, for a fair bit longer, such as installing bigger windows. Is that a viable or sensible thought? Install bigger windows to get more airflow, more circulation, so that some interior areas have an element of al fresco exterior safety within them. Is that a possibility?
Well, I think if you
Sorry, Reuben.
I think if you have the space to be able to do that, obviously, if it's a initial big capital layout, I mean, we all are sort of low on cash at the moment to sort of like spend big money. But I have to admit, if it means that we would have people come again that feel more safe, if we create that type of environment, we wouldn't have a choice then to do that, you know. So it's definitely something I think we all are looking at. But you know, if you have the space, then you can do that. I can't see people sort of like with sort of smaller spaces that doesn't really have that access to outside, how that's possible. But I don't know what you think, Liam.
Tony, 2 of my restaurants are in heritage protected buildings, so that's our question to start doing windows. We've got in 4 of our 5, all of our restaurants, we've got outdoor seating, but we're going into winter. I mean, we're having a pretty cold, wet, windy winter at the moment, so it's not really an option. We get lucky some weekends up in Franschhoek when the sun comes out. It's beautiful to go and sit out amongst the vineyards and that. But as Reuben says, cash flow at the moment is that there is no cash flow, and to start, you know, spending money on renovations and making windows bigger and whatever, for me, it's not an option. No, it's really not an option.
No. So the thing is, we've got to, when I say we, the industry, I'm not part of the industry, but I've observed it for decades and have occasionally dipped in and out in minor ways myself, and then seen the lights and gone back to journalism. But thank you. But the industry must survive. But the question everybody wants to know is, how do we do it? We've talked about some innovative ways. So in some ways, innovation is being forced on us. I was interested in particular, Liam, in that point that you brought up, and private dining rooms or private spaces within. And so the other innovations that you see your colleagues doing here or elsewhere in the world, what else can we expect to come out?
We've all turned into retailers, as Reuben said, you know. We, during the last 2 months, just within our group, we've started doing a whole product range of food that people can come in and buy and take away. So I'm talking about oils and dressings and cookies and cakes and all types of stuff. And it's been fantastic. We're going to continue to do it. It's been actually an interesting period to revalue your business. You actually find out an awful lot about your business when you actually have time to study it. When you're all busy and everything's normal and busy season, there's an awful lot slips by that you don't notice. So it's been very good for us in a sense of tightening our businesses up during this time. But retail is definitely one thing we are going to continue doing. And then I think the most important thing is we need to support local. We need to stop buying product from overseas right now. We need to start supporting the local guys, the local ceramicists, the local farmers. We can't be buying product from overseas when it's out of season here. We need to start cooking seasonally. We need to start buying locally, supporting the small farmers, supporting the corner shops, not the big corporates. I think we really, really need to start supporting local. And within our business now, I'm going to question every single thing we purchase going forward and where it's originated from. But for me, we've all got to start supporting each other, the small businesses, to try and rebuild them, to try and help each other. You know, I saw it yesterday. all our suppliers came out to help us. I mean, and I was so sad yesterday. I looked at students who've just finished 3 years in culinary college. They've got no job prospect whatsoever. I saw all of our suppliers who haven't had an order from us for 4.5 months. Some of them haven't been paid for produce they delivered pre-COVID because, you know, all of a sudden you have to pay every single supplier. That's a huge amount of money to pay out in one go.
Chain, and it goes all the way down the chain.
No, absolutely. And then I saw another sign yesterday, which really, I saw it on Facebook today, which really smacked me. It was a young lady with a sign, single mum, 3 kids.
Yeah.
We need to fix this. We need to sort it. You know, you talked about overseas, and Reuben touched on how, you know, they've been through it, but they've had much bigger and better support from government than we have. They've had, you know, they've got proper social systems in place where you can go and get dole money if you're unemployed. Not that it's limited for 3 months or 2 months or whatever, 3 months. We don't have any infrastructure like that. So it's not an option for us to stay closed continuously. It's not an option, because the TERS funds it's been extended now till the 15th of August. But what happens after that? If we still can't trade and we still can't pay alcohol or sell alcohol, who is going to pay these salaries? We don't have that support like they have in Europe, like they have in America, Australia. We don't have that support here. We don't have the infrastructure.
And can we just switch to the other side of this debate, the booze ban? And the fact is, and obviously everybody accepts, that the kernel of the alcohol ban is hinged on the fact that it is known that it leads to violence in the home, and to injuries and to deaths. So one accepts this and understands it. So I'm playing devil's advocate, but is it reasonable to expect to sell liquor in restaurants when we know this happens as a result of sales? Shall we go to Reuben first?
Well, I think, Tony, we can all acknowledge that we have that problem. I don't necessarily think that a blanket regulation to just ban alcohol outright is the right way to go. I think in most cases, people that come to our restaurants, they enjoy sort of the combination of food and wine. I mean, we can look at options, maybe how to limit that. I've seen a few suggestions where people say, you know, instead of just going to a bottle store and buying wine, to allow people to sit down and enjoy like a glass or 2 of wine with a meal. So part of the regulation is you have to enjoy a meal to be able to have a glass of wine or 2. I mean, it's one kind of solution. But I think a blanket sort of regulation to just ban alcohol outright, I don't necessarily think it's the right way to go. I think there's other options that could have been explored. Especially in the light of what a crippling effect it's having, not only on our businesses but also on the liquor industry as a whole. I think we should have looked at, or the government should have looked at, other options there. I mean, at the moment, basically criminals are being able to make money, and there's not a lot of policing there. While us law-abiding citizens that sort of employ thousands of people are sort of like being left out on the lurch. I mean, how can that be right?
And there's the you know, in from my own experience, I'm having parents who were from Britain, from Europe. I was brought up in the tradition that it is a civilized thing to have wine with a meal. Even the age of 10, I was allowed to have a very small amount of wine with the meal, not because my parents wanted me to be a drunk when I grew up, but because it was a civilized thing to do. Liam, some thoughts from you?
Yeah, look, I think you need to look at the statistics and see where the problems are. Which areas, which hospitals are getting inundated with alcohol-related problems. I can guarantee you it's in certain areas. It's not right across the board. So you need to sort of police those sort of areas. But, you know, my issue is, you know, there's been a cigarette ban, but you can still get cigarettes. But people have been made to pay 3 or 4 times what they normally pay for a packet of cigarettes. And it's the same with the alcohol. I can tell you 20 places where you can go and buy booze right now. I get people offering me alcohol every single day. I get emails from people with a selection of wines that I can buy, that they will deliver to my house.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you tell people you can't do this, it's like a little child. You tell a child not to do something. I know as a child, I was told not to do something. It just made me more determined not to. And it's the same with the drink.
Totally.
It's the same with the drink. But the problem with everybody paying way and above what they should be paying for illegal products is they're not putting food on the table as much as they should be. They're not paying, that money isn't being used for what it should be used. They're buying illegal cigarettes and illegal alcohol. The government is losing all of those taxes. And there's a whole load of people getting very wealthy through this lockdown, but putting people into complete misery, complete misery, because they're overspending on stuff. You can't tell someone who smoked 25 years, stop smoking. That doesn't work.
No. And then on the pub side of things, I mean, the Perseverance Tavern, I mean, of all places, you don't want to close. That's got to be hard. You know,
Absolutely.
It's an institution among institutions, and that is, you know, I don't like to use the word tragedy to anything that doesn't involve somebody's death or something truly tragic, but that's a really dire eventuality. We have an interesting question from somebody in our audience, Chris Newman, who says, could the entire industry go rogue and open regardless?
No, not well. For me personally, you know, they can walk in straight away. I do that once. I serve one bottle of wine to somebody, police walk in, I can lose my liquor license.
Yeah.
And I can lose my liquor license for all of my restaurants.
Yeah.
And I won't be able to apply again for a liquor license. I'll get a criminal record.
Yeah.
So I'll never be able to sell alcohol again. Never mind until they lift the ban. So for me, that's not an option. And I think people who are doing it are taking a big risk.
Yeah, and the same guy was saying, what would or could the consequences be? Well, you're sort of answering that. But if the entire industry in the world opened for business, well, taking the curfew into account, but I mean, then if the curfew is taken into account, it would sort of defeat the object, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to be forced to break the law. Why should I have to break the law?
No.
I think we'll be made. I think the government will make examples of us very quickly if we start to do that. So, you know, we don't have that option. Again, unlike sort of other sort of unscrupulous characters out there that can get away with it.
And now I want to posit a rather nasty scenario that I was just wondering yesterday this. And that is a matter of just sitting it out. Shouldn't restaurateurs just suck it up, wait it out, and start all over again once the virus has truly passed? Because when it comes down to it, that is what this is causing all the problem. Is it not possible that this ultimately is just inevitable for a great many restaurants? In other words, should it not be accepted that, sad and desperate as it is, the restaurant industry will be one of the biggest casualties of COVID-19, and that there's really no choice but to set it out, and when it's passed, pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and start all over again?
That sounds very simple. That sounds very easy. It's not that simple.
No.
It's really not that simple. And let me tell you, I have lost a business before.
Yeah.
And I have got up and dusted myself off. But it took me about a year to get up and dust myself off. It took me about a year to find my confidence again, because when you lose a business, for whatever reason, you lose your confidence. And the massive effect it has on mental health. And I can see it already, the effect it's having on some of my staff members, some of my friends in and out of this industry, not just in this industry, but people very close to me in our group who work with us. I can see the changes. We have to go in every day and motivate them and encourage them and try and be as positive as possible and keep the spirit up. I mean, that's why we open for takeout, to get motivation going again, to keep our brand alive. But it's not that easy, let's just close doors, walk away and come back in 6 months time and this is all gone. COVID's not going anywhere quick, I don't think. I really don't. It's around for quite a while until they find a vaccine for it. So we almost just go in a hole and wait. That's not going to solve anything if we all
so the only solution. Sorry.
No, I think that's a ridiculous comment.
And also, if I can add, I mean, it's not only restaurants. There's so many businesses that sort of will be affected if we just close. I mean, we can't just do it. It's not just the restaurants that will close. If you think of our suppliers, not just the big suppliers. I think in most cases, Liam would know, we work with smaller producers, smaller suppliers that are also, imagine the people working at those type of establishments. So it goes far deeper than just the restaurant. I think it will affect a hell of a lot more people than just us.
Well, look, I'm glad I asked that, because what it has done, it has brought the answer that is not, it's just not, it's not doable, it's not viable, which I didn't think it was.
Throw the towel in.
And exactly, but therefore the government has to listen to you guys, and to the reason we're here today. The government has to listen to you. These decisions have to be revisited, and that you guys, honestly, from my perspective now, not as a journalist or an observer, but just as a human being also involved in this, I personally need you guys to keep up the fight. So I'll just step back into myself there for a second, stepping back into my professional role. I'm just going to start wrapping up because we've got a minute or two left. So first of all, thank you, Reuben and Liam, for joining us today. It meant a lot to me personally that you would both be prepared to do this and to take part in this. And I appreciate all of your input. And I'd also like to thank everybody who's joined in the background, who have taken part wonderfully. I'm sorry I have not got to many of those questions, but I hope that what we have chatted about has offered plenty of food for thought for everybody. I also want to thank Daily Maverick's Fran Baton and Nicole Williamson, who have been holding my hand, especially Nicole, in the background all week, because nobody in the world knows how nervous I get right now than Nicole. Nicole, you've been fantastic. I appreciated it all very, very much. And stay safe wherever you are. We wish the restaurant industry strength. We support you, and we look forward to being back in your restaurants as soon as we're all past this terrible thing. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So cheers to that, and bon appetit to the many future meals we will enjoy in your restaurants and in the restaurants of many other people in the room, so to speak, and in the wider land and in the world. The day is coming, and we need to keep this in mind, that the day is coming when we will be past all of this, when we will be sitting al fresco and inside your restaurants, and with wine and plenty of it, toasting that we've all been through this together, and a year or who knows how long from now, boy, will we all have stories to tell. And for me, today will be one of them. So thank you again. And see you, I hope, sooner than later. All the best to everybody. And that's it from me. Ciao, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us on.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.